Namaste, Dandavat Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 3, the status quo, chapter 31, text 43. Dehena jiva bhutena lokalokam anuvrajam Punjana eva karmani karotya vir atampuman. Due to his particular type of body, the materialistic living entity wanders from one planet to another, following fruitive activities. In this way, he involves himself in fruitive activities and enjoys the result incessantly. Purport. When the living entity is encaged in the material body, he is called Jiva Bhuta. And when he is free from the material body, he is called Brahma Bhuta. By changing his material body birth after birth, he travels not only in the different species of life, but also from one planet to another. Lord Chaitanya says that the living entities bound up by fruitive activities are wandering in this way throughout the whole universe. And if by some chance or by pious activities they get in touch with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna, then they get the seed of devotional service. After getting this seed, if one sows it within his heart and pours water on it by hearing and chanting, the seed grows into a big plant, and there are fruits and flowers which the living entity can enjoy. Even in this material world, that is called the Brahmabhuta stage. In his designated condition, a living entity is called materialistic, and upon being freed from all designations, when he is fully Krishna conscious, engaged in devotional service, he is called liberated. Unless one gets the opportunity to associate with a bona fide spiritual master by the grace of the Lord, there is no possibility of one's liberation from the cycle of birth and death in the different species of life and through the different grades of planets. 44. Jivo hyasyanugadeho bhutendriya manomaya tanirodhosya maranam abhirbhavastu sambhava. In this way, the living entity gets a suitable body with a material mind and senses, according to his fruitive activities. When the reaction of his particular activity comes to an end, that end is called death. And when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth. Purport. From time immemorial, the living entity travels in the different species of life and the different planets almost perpetually. This process is explained in Bhagavad-gita. Brahmayam sarvabhutani yantra rudani mayaya. Under the spell of Maya, everyone is working throughout the universe on the carriage of the body offered by the material energy. Materialistic life involves a series of actions and reactions. It is a long film spool of actions and reactions, and one lifespan is just a flash in such a reactionary show. When a child is born, it is to be understood that his particular type of body is the beginning of another set of activities. And when an old man dies, it is to be understood that one set of reactionary activities is finished. We can see that because of different reactionary activities, one man is born in a rich family and another one is born in a poor family. Although both of them are born in the same place, at the same moment, and in the same atmosphere. One who is carrying pious activity within him is given a chance to take his birth in a rich or pious family, and one who is carrying impious activity is given a chance to take birth in a lower, poor family. The change of body means a change to a different field of activities. Similarly, when the body of the boy changes into that of a youth, the boyish activities change into youthful activities. It is clear that a particular body is given to the living entity for a particular type of activity. This process is going on perpetually from a time which is impossible to trace out. Vaishnava poets therefore say anadi karma phale, which means that these actions and reactions of one's activity cannot be traced, for they may even continue from the last millennium of Brahma's birth to the next millennium. We have seen the example in the life of Narada Muni. In one millennium, he was the son of a maidservant, and in the next millennium, he became a great sage. Texts 45 through 46. Dravyopalabdistanasya dravyeksha yogyata yada tad panchatvam mahamanad utpatir dravya darshanam yatakšnor dravayavyavya darshana yogyata yada tadaiva chakshusho drastur drastridvayogyatanayo. When the eyes lose their power to see color or form due to morbid affection of the optic nerve, the sense of sight becomes deadened. The living entity, who is the seer of both the eyes and the sight, loses his power of vision. In the same way, when the physical body, the place where perception of objects occurs, is rendered incapable of perceiving, that is known as death. When one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth. Purport. When one says, I see, this means he sees with his eyes or with his spectacles. He sees with the instrument of sight. The instrument of sight is broken or becomes diseased or incapable of acting. Then he, as the seer, also ceases to act. Similarly, in this material body, at the present moment, the living soul is acting, and when the material body, due to its incapability to function, ceases, he also ceases to perform his reactionary activities. When one's instrument of action is broken and cannot function, that is called death. Again, when one gets a new instrument for action, that is called birth. This process of birth and death is going on at every moment by constant bodily change. The final change is called death, and acceptance of a new body is called birth. That is the solution to the question of birth and death. Actually, the living entity has neither birth nor death, but is eternal, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Nahanyate hanyamane Nahanyate hanyamane sarire. The living entity never dies, even after the death or annihilation of this material body. Text 47. Tasmanna karya santraso na karpanyamna sambrama buddha jiva gatim diro mukta sangas charad iha. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, or have recourse to defending the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose. Purport. A sane person who has understood the philosophy of life and death is very upset upon hearing of the horrible, hellish condition of life in the womb of the mother or outside the mother. But one has to make a solution to the problems of life. A sane man should understand the miserable condition of this material body. Without being unnecessarily upset, he should try to find if there is a remedy. The remedial measures can be understood when one associates with persons who are liberated. It must be understood who is actually liberated. The liberated person is described in Bhagavad Gita, one who engages in uninterrupted devotional service to the Lord. having surpassed the stringent laws of material nature, is understood to be situated in Brahman. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is beyond the material creation. It is admitted even by impersonalists like Shankaracharya that Narayan is transcendental to this material creation. As such, when one actually engages in the service of the Lord in various forms, either Narayan or Radha Krishna or Sitaram, he is understood to be on the platform of liberation. The Bhagavatam also confirms that liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position. Since the living entity is eternally the servitor of the Supreme Lord, when one seriously and sincerely engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he is situated in the position of liberation. One should try to associate with a liberated person, and then the problems of life, namely birth and death, can be solved. While discharging devotional service in full Krishna consciousness, one should not be miserly. He should not unnecessarily show that he has renounced this world. Actually, renunciation is not possible. If one renounces his palatial building and goes to a forest, there is actually no renunciation, for the palatial building is the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the forest is also property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If he changes from one property to another, that does not mean that he renounces. He was never the proprietor of either the palace or the forest. Renunciation necessitates renouncing the false understanding that one can lord it over material nature. When one renounces this false attitude and renounces the puffed up position that he is also God, that is real renunciation. Otherwise, there is no meaning of renunciation. Rupa Goswami advises that if one renounces anything which could be applied in the service of the Lord, and does not use it for that purpose, that is called falgu paragya, insufficient or false renunciation. Everything belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, everything can be engaged in the service of the Lord. Nothing should be used for one's sense gratification. That is real renunciation. Nor should one unnecessarily increase the necessities of the body. We should be satisfied with whatever is offered and supplied by Krishna without much personal endeavor. We should spend our time executing devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That is the solution to the problem of life and death. Text 48. Samyag darshanaya buddhya yoga vairagya yuktaya maya virachite loke charanyasya kalevaram. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should regulate his body to this illusory world through his reason. Thus, one can be unconcerned with this material world. Purport. It is sometimes misunderstood that if one has to associate with persons engaged in devotional service, he will not be able to solve the economic problem. To answer this argument, it is described here that one has to associate with liberated persons not directly, physically, but by understanding through philosophy and logic the problems of life. It is stated here, Samyag darshanaya buddhya. One has to see perfectly, and by intelligence and yogic practice, one has to renounce this world. That renunciation can be achieved by the process recommended in the second chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. The devotee's intelligence is always in touch with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His attitude towards the material existence is one of detachment, for he knows perfectly well that this material world is a creation of illusory energy. Realizing himself to be part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, the devotee discharges his devotional service and is completely aloof from material action and reaction. Thus, at the end, he gives up his material body or the material energy, and as pure soul, he enters the kingdom of God. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 31st chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Lord Kapila's Instructions on the Movements of the Living Entities. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from chapter 32 on Monday. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Jai Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Nishingapuli Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Ju Ki Jai, Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Giri Govardhan Gupta Govardhan Dham Ki Jai, Shyam Kund, Radha Kund Ki Jai, Tosu Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi Ki Jai. Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. Scientific Sankirtan Yajna Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Institute Ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat Ki Jai. Nittai Gaur Premanandi Hari 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 Bol Jai Shrimati Devi Dasi Ki Jai.
Jai Gurudev. Sripad Krishna Keshav Prabhu Ji Ki Jai.
Dandavat Pranam Didi. Be bold.